Good afternoon, everyone. Here we are today to discuss our given report entitled Language of Art, Elements, and the Principle of Design. So, first we have elements of art. So, number one, line elements. The perception of lines is in some of the things we do every day. You see lines along the roadsides, in the corner of your rooms, in the guidelines of your notebooks, especially to us students. We often use lines in doing our assignments or projects. So this is one of the most common things that we usually encounter, the lines. So now let's move on to the nature of lines. So lines creates the impression of the movements. As such, when you see artworks with lines, your eyes makes a movement in the following its direction or path. So lines is very important, especially to an artist, because it is one of the uh, biggest way or common way to express their or to convey their feelings or thoughts or expressions. So now let's move on to the types of lines. So there are four types of lines. So first we have here vertical lines. So vertical lines, there are movements, direction is upward or downward. So I'll give you an example of vertical lines. So here's a great example of vertical lines where there's an art is composed by upward and downward lines in order to form or to create this flower. And second, we have horizontal lines. So horizontal lines, the movement direction is from left to right or vice versa. So the example of this is over there. So the movement, so as we see, the lines is going to other side or the opposite side from left to right in order to form also this beautiful flower vase or bottle. And let's go to the third. So the third we have here diagonal lines. So these are the slanted lines. They create an impression or a rising or falling. So I will give you an example of the diagonal lines. So here's the example of diagonal lines, which lines are being formed and slanted in order to form these faces. And fourth, so or lastly, we have what we call zigzag. So these are the connected combinations of diagonal lines. So I'll give you an example for that. So over there, this example of diagonal lines. So as we see, it will compose of zigzag lines in order to create this beautiful flower.
A few moments later.
So number two, shape, form, and space. Shape. A shape conveys defined two-dimensional area. It is an outlines around it recognized through its form. In a sense, just using an outline, shapes can be formed. So in general, shape conveys defined two-dimensional area. So two-dimensional area means that it has a flat surface like a TV or a picture frame. Next. These are the types of shapes, geometric shapes and free-form shapes. First, the geometric shapes. Geometric shapes are accurately measured shapes, hence having mathematical basis. The variations are square, rectangle, triangle, circle, oval, trapezoid, pentagon, hexagon, etc. So, geometric shapes are shapes that we use in a mathematical basis. These are the circle, star, hexagon, square, or even pentagon. Next, free-form shapes. Types of shapes that are irregular in structure. The combination of curves and angles. They are not structural and man-made. It exists in nature such as flowers, animals, humans, islands, trees, or etc. So, free-form shapes in general, these are the shapes that are man-made or even in nature like flower, animals, or humans. Next, forms. Forms are three-dimensional aspects of spaces and shapes. While shapes have length and weight or diameter, the component of form is a depth. One example is a box or a cube. It has a form. So forms are three-dimensional area. So we can see both sides, just like a box or a cube. Space. Space is an essential element to understanding art as it involves the outer and inner spaces of an artwork. This refers to a hypothetical area in which the subject of art, and other elements of an art operate. Next, positive and negative space. The shapes are forms of art, the positive space of an art. The empty spaces, on the other hand, are the negative space. In Gestalt psychology, they are called figure and ground, respectively. So, these empty spaces are the negative space. This one is a positive space. Next, creating shapes and forms in space. Shapes and forms can be natural resource and or manufactured by humans. For instance, animals, humans, flowers, and mountains are examples of natural occurring shapes. But they are shapes that are manufactured by humans through handcrafts, machines, assisted, or clay form. So in general, shapes can be formed by or reformed by humans. For instance, animals, flowers, humans, example of natural occurring shapes. But there are shapes that are manufactured by humans or machine-assisted clay forms. So next is an illusion of form by using the principles of value. While the meaning of lines can change by changing the value, shapes and forms can also change their meaning. An expression by utilizing altered values. For example, to magnify an object, certain techniques can be used, such as employing light and dark values. These techniques is called chiaroscuro. It's an Italian word that means bright, chiaro, and dark is called oscuro. So this picture shows an illusion. It uses the techniques of light and dark. It's called chiaroscuro.
A few moments later.
So next topic is all about illusion of using these top principles of perception. Depth can be defined as relative distance. With several objects defining the artwork, it may be necessary to give it some depth to visualize the story behind it. From these top principles of perception, there are techniques that can be used to create impression of depth. So, the first principle of perception is overlapping. Overlapping, the first object covers a second object. In effect, the first object becomes closer or nearer to the viewer. So this is the example of overlapping. So overlapping is of two things: to extend or lie partly over each other, or to cover and extend beyond something. So next principle is size. Size is large objects often are perceived to the nearer than the relatively smaller ones. So there's sample of size. So size can be defined as the measurement of the object or the thing using its overall dimension. The size tells us how big or small something. So the third principle of perception is placement. Placement objects placed on the lower. So muna siya ang example sa placement. Placement is the action of putting someone or something in particular place, or the fact of being placed. So the first principles of perception is detail. Detail objects with clearer details are usually nearer, while those with finer and less details seem to be farther. So muna ang sample sa murag layo sa tubangan. So the next principle of perception is detail. Detail objects with the clearer details are usually nearer, while those with finer and less details seem to be farther. So this is the example of detail. So detail is an isolated element within a work of art, particularly from painting, sculpture, or building. So the fifth principle of perception is color. Brightly or vividly colored objects seem nearer than the ones. So this is example of color. So color is defined as the aspects of things that is caused by differing qualities of light being reflected or emitted by them. To see color, you have to have light. Then light shines on an object. Some colors bounce off the objects and others are observed by it. The last one is converging lines. Converging lines, as parallel lines move away from your plane of view, they move closer to the horizon, which makes a perception of distance farther away from you. The farthest converging can be called the vanishing point. So this is example of converging lines. So converging lines that appear to move towards each other as they recede into the distance. So they create an illusion of depth, and their convergence points is known as vanishing points. So let's move to next topic: expressive qualities of shape, form, and space. So first is outline and surface. Outline and variation in the surface may bring different kinds of message. So first type of this is angular shapes. On the other hand, project the sharp and jagged realities of the world. This could mean pain, anxiety, or tension. So the angular shapes are a shape having one or more sharp angles. So next is geometric shapes. Maybe even just suggest aspects of mechanical perception. It projects a certain sense of order and logic. In effect, they may tend to lack the emotional accessibility to it, while they express those to viewers. These perceptions can be more mental and ideal rather than effective. So, geometric shapes can be defined as figure of area closed by a boundary which is created by combining the specific amount of curves, points, and lines. So there are different types of geometric shapes. First is triangle, second circle, and last is square. So the next is outline and surface. Outline and surface. Density refers to the compactness of the object. Dense materials tend to be solid and heavy looking. So next is openness. Open shapes projects invitations. So open shapes are figures or shapes that have different starting and end points. Their ends are open, do not meet. Since they have open ends, these shapes do not have a fixed area. Also, they do not have a well-defined interior and exterior region. Next type of openness is closed shapes and forms. On the other hand, projects more solid and self-contained field of perception. Closed doors and windows tend to be more restrictive to interpretation. A person with folded arms tied to his body portrays emotion of tension, mystery, or privacy. Like Egyptian caskets, called sarcophagus, are usually defined by afforded with dignity, but at the same time must be impressed with privacy and protection, like closed or restricted shapes. So closed shapes are shape and defined as a shape that starts and ends at the same point. In other words, a closed shapes does not have an open end.
A few moments later.
A pleasant day to everyone. My name is Kylie called V. Cadalio. I am the next reporter. So our report is all about colors. So colors play a crucial role in making lines, shapes, and space alive. They are used to describe emotions such as blue for sadness and green for sexual thoughts, and the sunny personality for a person's bright and fun character. So understanding the properties and applications of colors and how to give a meaning to them to help us appreciate and understand our surrounding. So colors is an art, elements drives fun, lights and reflections. White is light when passed through a prime. Creates a rainbow of colors. These are colors activates colors receptors. called cone. So, which process informations of darkness and lightness. The way you use perceived cones or colors depends on the light reflect on each object. Three properties. So there are three properties of colors, matters of photography. Hues checks values, smart, intensity. These properties can be alternate during photo taking. So hues, primarily hues is such as red, blue, yellow, and created by mixing two primary colors. Secondary hues are formed by mixing two primary colors, and intermediates or tertiary colors are created by mixing a primary colors with a secondary colors. So this is my example. As you can see, the primary, secondary colors. So values. So I will explain to you what is values. Values refers to the lightness and darkness of the color, which some colors appealing dark to represent darkness, or theme neutral colors like yellow, violet, black, white, gray, and reflects light. So it reflects lights. With darkness, the colors absorbs more lights. To alternate values, hues can be added white with black, creating light values like bright sunny day, and the darker value like night skies. Intensity. Intensity refers to a brightness or dullness of a hue with high intensity resulting in a brighter color, and low intensity resulting in the dead ones. Complementary colors opposites to each other absorbs high waves such as red and green, but not at all provides loud arousals. So, letter E. Color triads. Art focus on three general colors, spaced on equal intervals on the color wheel, including primary, secondary, and tertiary. Use triads which not convey a strong colors differentiations. So, letter E. Complete split. So split complements is combined as hue with its opposite sides, offering more colors range and dynamic specifications. For example, red for orange complements its blue to green, allowing for perfect nature art with red, orange as a sun, blue for water, and green for trees. So F is warm and cool colors. The color wheel is divided into warm and cool groups, with warm colors like red, orange, and yellow, representing the fire and sunshine. So the cold colors like blue, green, and violet is representing snow, water, and grass.
A few moments later.
Expressive qualities of colors. Like other elements, colors convey ideas, emotion, and actual behaviors. What makes color useful in expression is its ability to represent reality, something that is more like how our senses see it. So, the use of colors is it can be used in many aspects, just like ideas, emotions. Kung unsay imong ideas, madrawing nimo siya, ma-represent mo siya by using the colors, mahimo nimo siyang mas realistic. And kung unsay imong makita sa mga butang, makita po nimo sa ihang artwork, it's because of color. A. Optical colors. The use of optical colors is an artist's approach to reproduce colors as they seem to be. This approach intends to capture reality as it and not a version or impression of it. Optical color are usually the approach of most artists with the attempt to ensure that their art is similarly colored with reality. So, ang optical colors, the use of it is that ang mga artist makaproduce sila o kanang mga artwork nga kung unsa na to sila makita in reality sa artwork, inato po dato ang makita. So, ang aim sa mga artists is they will ensure that their art is similarly colored with reality. Kung unsa atong makita sa atong palibot or kung unsa atong makita sa atong palibot, mao pud ato ang makita sa ilang artwork that it look like real. Arbitrary colors. Because feelings, emotion, and some thoughts are abstract, literal portrayal of colors such as optical colors is mostly inapplicable. Instead, arbitrary applications of colors may give justice to the indefinability of some subject matters in art. So when we say arbitrary, it is not planned or chosen, or it is not based on the reality. So kung makita na to ang uban nga mga artwork is dili siya detailed. Ang mga colors mo siya gamix-mix. But ang thoughts niya or ang iyahang gusto nga ipaabot nga message is makita gihapon siya or it is visual. Space, together with lines, positioning, colors have also been used to create impressions of depth. Warm colors are believed to advance towards viewers while cool colors tend to recede. So ang kanin sa space, ang mga warm colors are believed to advance toward viewers or meaning to say mas maka-attract pag sa viewers nga mao ang makita dahil sa viewers. Number 4, texture refers to how the subject and the object of the piece feels if touched. This is an essential component in creating the dynamics in the artwork by showing that certain surfaces have different feels according to their nature. So, in texture, this is how you feels like if you touch the artwork. So, if you're going to touch na yung mga artwork na usahay nga rough, na usahay nga they are smooth, it depends on their nature. Perceiving texture. Texture is perceived through the senses. Tactile texture is the feeling derived out of the touching a specific object of art. In sculptures, for example, you can sense the type of stone or wood that has been used in developing one. So, ang ginaingon diri sa perceiving texture is you can recognize yung unsa ang mga type of stone or unsa nga wood ang ilahang gigamit sa ilahang sculpture. Texture can be simulated or invented. In simulated texture, they tend to imitate the real texture of an object. So, meaning to say, ilahang ginasunod or gina-imitate. When we say imitate, ilahang gina-copy nila kung unsa ang the real one. Like a craftsman or carpenter, he can make wood feel like a solid ground. Number 1, rhythm, pattern, and movement. Rhythm in art is the principle that is defined by the repetition of elements or objects. This principle also present in other forms of art, such as music and even poetry. So, ang kaning rhythm, pattern, and movement, dili ra ni siya ginagamit when it comes to art. So, usually, ginagamit po ni siya pareha sa music and poetry. Visual rhythm. This is the kind of rhythm that is created by the sense of sight rather than the sense of hearing. So, ang kanina ay ang visual rhythm, ang gina-create ni siya through the sense of sight, dili through the sense of hearing. This is observed in the repetition of positive spaces or ground and then separated by negative spaces. Pattern. Rhythm can be applied in the two-dimensional space called pattern. In the aspect of clothing design, the most common example of pattern is stripes that may be vertical or horizontal. Ma-apply ni siya in many aspects. Just like sa mga clothing design, ang common nga design are usually stripes. Sometimes it may be vertical or horizontal. So when we say pattern, it is the repeated form of design, especially that is used to decorate something or something that happens in a regular or repeated way. When we say repeated way, ginabalik-balik siya nga process. Some three-dimensional, such as sculpture and architecture, their motifs are also called modules. For example, in a furniture, there are matching units of motifs called modules. This is defined by Reagan's 2005. But this pattern do not only perform decorative functions, but they are also performed in a functional purposes.
A few moments later.
Good day, everyone. Today I will be discussing and reporting my topic, which is the types of rhythm and patterns. Arranging the patterns can vary. Each variation may create a different personality of the artwork. So first, random. Motifs may be placed randomly across the space. This is characterized by the lack of regularity in the spaces in between. For example, Photography on fallen leaves may leave random patterns. As you can see, some of the fallen leaves from the trees have its pattern. Wall cracks can also be randomly assigned across the space. Buildings in a picture may not necessarily be spaced regularly. So that's the random. Second, regular. Opposite to random patterns, regular patterns are characterized by having identical beats, motifs, and intervals of the space between them. In effect, you can observe a steady beat across motifs. This is best used when you intend to project a more organized. So third, the alternating. This type of rhythm employs two types of beat motif. First and second beats are usually arranged in alternating distances or intervals. Its applications include flowing rhythms by repeating wavy lines. For example, when you choose to draw waves of water, alternating rhythms or flowing patterns can be utilized. This can be done by alternating the swelling of water up and down the space. Fourth, but not the least, progressive. Progressive patterns or rhythms portray change in beat every time it is repeated. Accordingly, the changes are steady. For every beat or for each beat, they appear slightly different with each other. For example, you may try to progressively increase the size of a shape from one end of the space to other. One of its example is this one. As you can see, it's progressive, right? So that's what you call progressive. So second, balance. Art and its forms must contain a certain type of balance. This is the principle of art by ensuring that all elements of art are accorded with equal force. Balance with relationship to the mathematical sense is usually measured with a scale, but scaling in art application does not usually require an object to measure weight or height. So in balance, there are two types of balance. There are many types of balance rather. So formal balance. First is the formal balance. There is considerable formal balance when elements are shaded equally in both sides of the symmetry. It is the most common type of balance in producing art. It may not be necessary that there are equal amounts of elements on each side. Formal balance demonstrates equal rigor, strength, or weight on each side regardless of the number of elements found each side. Sometimes, formal balance is characterized by symmetry. So, I will give example of the formal balance. As you can see, this is the example of a formal balance. Second, radial balance. This is a type of balance where the design of the art piece radiates from the central point and an outward direction. An example of radial balance is the mandala. So this is its example. So if there's a so as we continue, if there's a formal balance, there's also an informal balance. These are artists that choose to portray a more casual and less planned art. Most of the time, their outputs have informal balances, but this is not an indication of less aesthetic value. Rather, these artists have less conventional approaches by employing abstracted and complex balance portrayal. In effect, when you perceive their works, your point of view is not usually drawn towards the middle, but usually in the irregular positions of the space. So, how to present informal balance in art? In most cases, these types of art are interpreted to be accidental arrangements, but learning more on the intent would indicate a deeper meaning to their informal balance. Artists usually consider the placement of the objects and elements and put them accordingly to emphasize the imbalance.
How to present informal balance in art. In most cases, these types of art are interpreted to be accidental arrangements, but learning more on the intent would indicate a deeper meaning to their informal balance. Artists usually consider the placement of the objects and elements and put them accordingly to emphasize the imbalance. To this end, artists do not only use this as an aesthetic but also a part of the storytelling and meaning extraction. So, how to present informal balance in art? So, in order for us to present the informal balance, we need to have the size and contour, color, value, texture, and its position. So, third, proportion. Proportion is the principle of art that is mostly concerned with how the sizes of objects and some elements relate to each other. The idea of proportion started during the time of a Greek philosopher, Pythagoras, who believed that the world or the universe operates on a constant mathematical equation. So this is an example of proportion. So let's proceed. Scale. A scale refers to the relative size of an object measured from a standard reference. This is different from proportion in that the latter is a measurement relative to other elements of the space, while the former is based on a standard measurement. So this is the example of a scale. And that's my topic.